Speaker, and firstly I'd like to acknowledge your promotion to the role of Acting Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, this budget, this moment, makes me think of my two young girls. It makes me think of 2040, when they will be in their 20s, starting their careers, starting their independent lives, maybe starting families and their contribution to their community. The 2020 recession will roll off the tongue as an historical reference. My girls will remember how they were schooled from home and may or may not remember a time when hand sanitizer and social distancing were not part of everyday life. The economy will have rebounded, we may have even had another downturn, and the actions of governments at this moment will be largely forgotten. I am under no illusion there will be few people who read my 2020 budget reply speech in 20 years' time, but today I put this on the record just in case they do. I want them to know that debt and deficit was in the Palaszczuk government's DNA before the virus. Now they are opportunistically unashamed about racking up record debt and deficit. I want them to know that there was no plan for surpluses and debt reduction before the virus. Now they don't think they have to worry about it. I want them to know that there was not a government in Australia before the virus more eager to rack up debt and fund their frivolous initiatives than the Palaszczuk Labor government. The Palaszczuk government spend like there was no consequences. If we all lived like that, we would be bankrupt. And the sad thing is, in the world they live in, there is no consequences to their spending. You see, they only think of themselves, selfishly about their own jobs, and politically they can get away with spending like a drunken sailor because the consequences of those actions won't be on their careers. The consequences will be on the economy my daughters will be entering in 20 years. The consequences will be the fact that we could have had better roads, better schools and better hospitals if this government hadn't wasted money in 2020. The consequences will be that my girls will probably move from Queensland to find the opportunities that this state could have provided if this government looked further forward than the next opinion polls. Mr Speaker, this budget was a unique opportunity to lead our state out of a COVID-inspired recession. Instead, and yet again, what we have is a budget from a government that shirks the hard work, a budget that avoids tough decisions, a budget that is an emblem of this government, content with standing still and avoiding trouble rather than building Queensland's ambition. A budget and a government that lacks leadership, lacks vision and fails to foster the economic conditions in which Queenslanders can thrive. Queensland is the last state in the nation to release a budget this year, and now we know why. The hypocrisy of this government is unmatched. To ask Queenslanders to trust them and then blatantly abuse that trust by hiding the dire state of our economy and their lack of vision until after the election is an ultimate betrayal. What we have seen in this budget is the extent of Labor's disdain for the truth and the lengths they will go to in order to hoodwink Queenslanders and abuse their misplaced trust. This budget undermines the extraordinary effort that Queenslanders went to this year as we collectively battled an insidious threat. And as we emerge from the COVID recession, Queenslanders deserve a budget that was built on ambition, inspired by confidence and delivered a vision for the future. Instead, Labor have served up more of the same stale and recycled excuses for its failure to lead Queensland out of the economic wilderness. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labor Party has zero credibility when it comes to economic management. Assertions from the other side that Queenslanders gave the Palaszczuk Labor government a mandate at the election could not be further from the truth. Queenslanders were unfortunate victims of an orchestrated scare campaign. And to blame COVID for the state's economic performance is a cheap shot given the Labor government's abysmal track record before the pandemic hit. Before coronavirus, Queensland had the highest unemployment rate, largest government debt, lowest business confidence and highest bankruptcies in the nation because Labor had no economic plan. Hospital waiting times had blown out, our children's education standards had fallen, our police were overstretched and under-resourced, youth crime was out of control and we had one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. After 5 years of a Labor government, Queensland also had the most bankruptcies in the country and business confidence was at rock bottom. At the same time, the Treasurer also introduced 9 new or increased taxes, ripping a further $3.5 billion out of the state's failing economy. No one could have predicted the economic, social and health crisis that we have been dealt in the form of the coronavirus pandemic. Despite these unprecedented times, Queenslanders have proudly responded to the challenge and proven yet again just how deep the Queensland fighting spirit runs. And they deserve far better leadership and economic management as we emerge from the health crisis. They do not deserve decades of ongoing economic pain and hardship brought on by a Labor government that has shown time and time again an abject failure to manage the state's economy. Today, as we move into COVID recovery mode, the economic forecast is just as dire, with debt now projected to blow out to $130 billion and one of the worst unemployment rates in the country at 7.5%. In 4 years' time, while our New South Wales cousins revel in the fruits of their government's tough decisions, Queenslanders will yet again bear the brunt of Labor's inability to invest for growth. As we heard earlier from the Leader of the Opposition, despite the mammoth debt bill of $130 billion, our state's net worth will have increased by a mere 0.8%.
That's fantastic. That's well done, Labor.
It was the architect of the once strong Queensland economy, former Treasury and Investment boss Sir Leo Hilscher.
You would have got better money backing me in the election. At least you would have got 5%.
It was the architect of the once strong Queensland economy, former Treasury and Investment boss Sir Leo Hilscher, who first raised the alarm bells when he said that the Palaszczuk government had no strategy, no plan and no program to pay down their debt, which at that time was forecast to hit $83 billion. Fast forward to today and that $83 billion is forecast to reach $130 billion. Sir Leo also lamented the loss of our AAA credit rating at the hands of the Labor Party more than a decade ago. Cash reserves and superannuation surpluses had been raided and debt was still rising. He said that our recent budgets had been balanced by the reallocation of our cash reserves. What the most respected Treasury boss of our time was saying is that this government was robbing Peter to pay Paul. Madam Deputy Speaker, history is repeating itself. As we head into Christmas, there are almost 214,000 Queenslanders looking for work. During the last term of this Labor government, from November 17 to January 2020, this once proud state had on average the worst unemployment rate in the nation. And based on Labor's own forecast, and despite the massive debt burden, after another term of this Palaszczuk government, our unemployment rate will still be the worst in the country. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to reflect on what this budget has delivered for the constituents in my electorate of Nindri. It won't take long. Since I was first elected, I've been lobbying the Minister for Transport and Main Roads for funding for critical road infrastructure upgrades. This included, among other important traffic and safety improvements, upgrading the roundabout at the intersection of the Andina-Coolum Road and School Road. This is a failing intersection that can no longer accommodate the 8,000+ residents of Coolum and the 1,000 more tourists who visit. Each day, parents and kids from the Coolum State School need to negotiate this intersection as they travel to and from school. It is not just a bottleneck, but a serious safety concern as the backlog of vehicles tails back onto the Sunshine Motorway, causing the motorway to fail. This has caused many accidents over the years, some of them fatal. The local Labor Party even staged a demonstration during the election campaign, waving placards at this very roundabout in Coolum, where I met the minister last year, demanding their own Labor minister take action to bus congestion at Coolum. My community and I were delighted in the lead-up to the election when the Labor Party finally committed to fund this important upgrade and also committed to duplicating the Sunshine Motorway. Madam Deputy Speaker, I can assure you that the thousands of motorists who get stuck in the congestion every single day were ecstatic at this announcement. Fast forward to this week, though, a mere month after the election, and we now find out these commitments were just another broken Labor promise, with not a single cent allocated in this year's budget to these important infrastructure upgrades. Residents of the Sunshine Coast have been shortchanged yet again and rightly deserve better. Down the road in Caloundra South, where police numbers have failed to keep up with the rapid population growth and crime is subsequently spiralling out of control and calls for service are at record highs, Labor promised a new police station, a carrot for the thousands of young families who now call that area home. With law and order being such an important issue right across the state, those voters put their faith in a Labor government that said it would listen and were willing to invest in the safety of their community. So where is the funding? Or was it just another broken promise? These are just a few of the broken promises we've heard about this week. No doubt we'll hear many more by the time all my colleagues reflect on how the budget has failed to deliver for their communities right across the state. Unfortunately, we've also heard of yet another betrayal of their trust. During the election, the Treasurer assured Queenslanders that borrowings would be limited to $4 billion to cover the costs of the Labor Party's election commitments. Madam Deputy Speaker, was the Treasurer lying, or are his accounting skills so poor that he forgot to allow for the cost of running the state? Because when the Treasurer handed down his budget on Tuesday, we learnt that borrowings will actually be in the vicinity—
Pause the clock. Member for Ninderry. I ask that you withdraw the unparliamentary language.
Withdraw the what?
Lying. It's unparliamentary, sorry.
Yep, I withdraw. Or is his accounting skills so poor that he forgot to allow for the costs of running the state? Because when the Treasurer handed down his budget on Tuesday, we learnt that borrowings will actually be in the vicinity of $28 billion, a figure 7 times that which he promised Queenslanders. These borrowings are not an investment in our state's economy, nor will they contribute to the cost of building infrastructure or creating jobs. As I and the others on this side have pointed out earlier, no net gain in wealth or value, just more economic pain for our children and our grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, around 97% of all businesses in this state are small businesses, and in my electorate alone there are more than 4,500 of them. They are the backbone of our economy, and we need to do more for them. If we support small business, they will do the heavy lifting by driving employment and economic growth. But this government has again proven that it has no interest in supporting the mums and dads who make up the large portion of our small family-run businesses. Families that are working hard, making sacrifices to improve their lot, to employ people and to give back to the community. What does the Labor Party do for small business? They smash them in with increased taxes, higher costs and more red tape. In their last budget, Labor's 9 new increased taxes ripped almost $4 billion out of the Queensland economy. This year, COVID has delivered another hammer blow, but instead of giving our small businesses a lifeline and giving businesses more time to get back on their feet, Labor have yet again failed to provide the right economic conditions to allow them to thrive. According to the state's peak business advocacy group, the CCIQ, Labor's budget is a missed opportunity. It has failed to deliver the immediacy that is required to build business confidence in the short term and lay the foundation for a job-creating, business-led recovery in the long term. We can thank our federal colleagues for doing much of the heavy lifting that has helped keep the blood flowing through the veins of small business during the health crisis. But given the state's bleak economic outlook, what will happen when JobKeeper payments dry up in March? Labor had an opportunity to spell their anti-business sentiment and provide some salvation by waiving payroll tax, but that is not the Labor way. Just as soon as the green shoots of recovery from a COVID-inspired recession emerge, businesses will be smashed by their accrued payroll tax debt. Is it any wonder Queensland had the highest number of business bankruptcies in the nation during the last term of this government? In this budget, they found they had proven yet again that they are no friend of small business. When the Treasurer commented that he does not like to borrow money, I almost fell off my chair. Debt and borrowing money is part of the Labor Party's DNA, and when Labor run out of money, they come after yours. Labor have form when it comes to reneging on their promises, fudging the figures and glossing over the facts. In fact, it has become a hallmark of this Labor administration. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labor Party has been exposed. As the tide goes out, they've been caught with their pants down again. As I've said many times in this House, the two highest priorities of any government is the safety and security of its citizens and to provide an economic environment in which its citizens can prosper. And on these highest priorities, Labor have failed across the board, systematically, profoundly and unforgivably. To add to that pain, this Labor government has also breached the trust of Queenslanders who this year have been forced to completely change the way they live their lives. They have done so courageously and with the utmost trust that governments would do everything they could do to protect them. Queensland will always be a great place to live, no matter how reckless this government is in breaking promises, no matter how reckless they are managing the books. We will love this state. But sadly, in 2040, when those opposite are sitting on union boards in semi-retirement, my girls will be trying to get jobs in an economy that will not be all it could be. They will probably not know the best Queensland they could have. We've seen the writing on the wall with this budget. In the first 4 weeks of this term, we have seen what the next 4 years will be like. 4 lost years. 4 years that set Queensland behind. This is the legacy of this Palaszczuk Labor government, Madam Deputy Speaker, a legacy that will be borne by all our kids, our grandkids and for generations to come.
Speaker.
I call the member for Stafford.
It gives me great pleasure to rise in support of the government's budget.